So the first brand you remember having impact in your life?
Coca-Cola.
Really?
I love Coca-Cola. I still love Coca-Cola.
So what do you drink? Diet?
I drink
Heavy?
straight up regular.
Heavy Coke.
And nobody really wants to serve me one.
So Coca-Cola, why? Why Coke?
It reminds me of my father. My elderly father loved always Coca-Cola. And he would always say, ice cold Coke.
Right.
And that's all I want is an ice cold Coke.
On the rocks. Well, welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the CMO podcast.
Thank you.
So we're in Cannes at the festival. This is my 16th year.
Wow.
How many years have you been coming?
3.
Just 3?
I have been in this business 30 years, and I think I've been here 3 times. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
So why do you come?
Well, this time I came, I think, the key for me was to have a very curated experience, because if you come and you're kind of just walking around, I think, you can waste a lot of time walking around in Cannes.
Yeah.
And so I intentionally did a number of panels on topics I'm interested in, and I'm meeting with people that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you do it in a block of time, I'm going to be here literally like 48 hours. Get it all done, and go back home.
Super. So what's the weirdest thing that's happened to you in Cannes since you arrived?
Well, I lost my bag.
You lost your bag?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
and so, but then the good news is I found my bag.
You found it, so you'd have to buy a whole new wardrobe. It'd
No,
be very expensive to buy a new wardrobe
I texted
here.
my husband, I said, lost my bag, and he said, lucky you're in France. So that was, not a great thing. Other than that, nothing weird yet, but I haven't been here that long.
Coolest thing you've done, or person you met, or insight you've heard, or company you've listened to or met?
I was on a really interesting panel this morning. So one of the things I'm really trying to do while I'm here is go and talk to people about female creators. Mm-hmm. And so I was on a panel this morning about female creators, and that's a topic I'm particularly interested in. So, and it's buzz. There are a lot of topics like diversity, women, and so mission, purpose. I think those are the themes I've been taking away so far.
Yeah, for sure. So you know what we have in common?
What?
We both started as journalists.
Really?
You know that?
Started as a journalist?
Yeah. I worked 4 years at Time Inc. way back in the Mad Men era.
I didn't know that.
And my starting salary was $7,600.
Okay, mine was $11,000, but it's only because my father made me negotiate up from $10,000.
I was just so glad to have a job
Oh,
in
me
publishing
too.
after college.
Me too, but I only did it for a year because I literally could not afford to get my own apartment in New York, and I was going to have 3 roommates, and it was going to be at best a 1-bedroom, because if I had 3 people total, I could be in a studio. And so that's why I moved to California, where I could live comfortably.
On $11,000.
But then I got out of publishing.
Yeah. It took
quickly,
me a little bit longer.
Very quickly, but I would still love to be in publishing.
Yeah, I love the job.
Yeah.
I realized the decisions were not being made by the editorial side.
No.
And I was having trouble living.
And I think the other thing, at least starting off, was to be an editorial assistant, they really wanted me to be a very good typist. Mm-hmm. And so I failed probably 4 or 5 typing tests.
I did too.
You did?
Yeah.
Terrible.
I took typing at night at the local high school just to get faster. Right? Had to do it.
But it was useful.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
been one of the most useful skills I have, is typing.
Yeah, and I rode a lot of public transit back then. I had no car, couldn't afford a car, and $7,600,
That's great, but it was good training.
So you've come a long way from then, and you were just inducted into the AMA Hall of Fame along with Keith Weed and Wendy Clark. So that's a big deal. I mean, you look at the people that are in that, it's a great honor. So what did you share with the audience when you were admitted into the Hall of Fame, which is just a little while ago, right? A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was just recently, and it is a lovely honor, although I have to, it's somewhat bittersweet because I feel like the universe is telling me something. It's like the Cecil B. DeMille Award. It's time for you to go. But it is an incredible honor, and I think the insight that I wanted to share with people is kind of what I've learned over the past 30 years in marketing. And I just wrote a paper. I co-authored a paper with Kevin Keller from Tuck, who's an old friend who did
a friend of mine as well.
A case on Intel back 25 years ago when he was at Stanford, and I helped him with that case. So we've known each other this whole time. And so we co-authored a paper on the 10 tenets of modern marketing. So that's what I talked about.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll get into that in a bit. So I'm so happy we're doing this podcast in Cannes, but I'd be happy to do it anywhere because your tenure as a CMO, I think, is one of the most remarkable in the world now, and I'm telling you why. You've been a CMO for 13 years. The average tenure is 4.5. Your stock has grown about 8x during that time. You've been part of an Adobe team that totally flipped your business model, and you're on a cool board with Mattel. You moved most of your marketing spending to digital before anyone else was doing it. So I love that. So what?
This podcast is over.
It's over, right? Now we're going to get into how you do that and kind of what your learning has been, the 10 tenets. But before we do that, I want to warm up a bit. So tell me what the best day in your career has ever been.
The best day in my career may have been at the beginning of my career. I worked at Intel, and I was actually on the publishing side. I ran employee communications, and I'd been there a few years. My colleague ran customer communications. This was a much bigger job than me. I was actually making $28,000 at this point, which is a huge amount of money. And he decided to leave and go to the agency world, and he gave me a heads up that in case they were going to give me this other role, he was making $37,000. This was a really big thing of him to do. I mean, he had no need to do that. So lo and behold, I get the job, and they don't offer me $37,000. And it was very stressful for me because I knew I was due that amount. And so I went into my boss and I said, Jim, I just want you to know that John told me he was making $37,000, and if I'm going to take that job, I think that you need to pay me that. And he said, absolutely, I'm going to pay you that. So the best moment was that moment where I was taught to really advocate for myself.
Yeah, so that's what you learned, right?
I did,
Stand
and
up,
my whole life I've been
honest.
advocating for myself. I have 2 boys. I tell them every day, advocate for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great lesson. Well, we can end the podcast now. No, more warm up. Your most influential boss in your career?
Dennis Carter, also at Intel, who was the right-hand guy for Andy Grove. And, it was this pivotal time at Intel, PC Revolution. And he's the one who had the crazy idea to do Intel Inside. And he came to me, and I was going to go to business school after my publishing little gig at Intel. And he said, give me 6 months. I have this great idea. We're going to make microprocessors into consumer goods. And we're going to come up with a campaign called Intel in it at the time, and we'll create pull for microprocessors in computers. And I said, that's a psycho idea. I'm not doing that. And he said 6 months, and we did a test market in Denver. And I was going to go to business school, decided against it. He taught me everything I know about marketing.
How long did you work with him?
I worked for him for 10 years.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, that campaign was iconic on ingredient branding. I mean, we studied it at P&G.
It was all him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super. So what's one thing that we cannot learn about you online? What's not out there?
That I'm neurotic.
You sure that's not out there?
It probably is out there. I don't know. I'll Google myself later and see what it says. No, I think other than that, I'm like a total TV crazy hound. I love television.
So what are you watching now?
I watch a lot of crazy
Lots of
things.
stuff.
Right now, I just watched Dead to Me, which is a show about 2 kind of crazy women who end up in a very weird situation. And so, but I watch things. I feel like I'm in marketing. I should know what's going on out there. So I make every single night. I watch at least an hour of television.
Wow. So you're able to sort of kick back and watch it and not worry about your productivity.
That's like the only thing I
that's
do
your
that
only-
is relaxing.
Yeah. So only an hour. You never do like 5 hours at a time or 10 hours at a time?
No, I meter myself because I love it so much. I don't want to do it all at once.
Okay, super. All right. So you're neurotic. You watch a lot of TV. So let's get into a bit more.
And those are my best assets.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, we'll keep going here. It's going to get better and better. So Adobe. I was just talking to one of my team about your brand, and she said, it's hard to put into a few words what they do. So
I think that's true.
I'd like you to tell me if you were coming to a 5th grade class to talk about your brand, how would you describe it?
Okay. Well, I'll do the 5th grade version. We make software.
Yep.
We make software for anyone who wants to create something. It can be some form of photograph. It can be an illustration. It can be a video. It could be a document. It can be a web experience. And we're kind of the core technology that helps you create that helps you measure it, preserve it, and it helps you sell.
So if I were to ask you that question when you joined Adobe in 2006 versus today, what would you have said then?
It would be a truncated version of that because at the time that I joined, we were making creative software for sure, and we had PDF. But this idea of making everything and measuring everything, I think we were nowhere close to that in terms of a vision. But I think the whole idea that we eventually came to was that if people were making a lot of content, they wanted to know how it was working.
Right.
And there was no real mechanism in the digital world to enable them to find out how it was working. And I think the marriage of that, and this was my boss, Shantanu Narayan, the CEO, the marriage of that and the vision to the foresight to see that would matter to people was pretty profound.
So we talked in your introduction about the remarkable run you and your team have had since you came there, and the huge stock price advance. So tell the listeners what they could learn from your incredible run of 13 years. You said you just wrote a paper about the 10 tenets. But, if you were advising my class here in Cannes, right, I teach a class of young marketers, what insights, what habits, what practices did you learn in that remarkable journey?
Yeah, so I think how it started for us was a desire to be able to make marketing important and have impact. And, you've been in this business a long time. It's always been a struggle to be able to really quantitatively measure the value of marketing. And I was a brand marketer for all of my career, and that's my passion. I'm a creative person, so that's where I was, usually gravitating. But when I saw what digital could do for us as a business, that I think sparked, and really that's our business model now, the ability to be able to be extremely creative and yet know exactly who's viewing your media, what they're doing, what is relevant to them, what they hate, and then be able to, customize basically a relationship based on all of that information. That was what we started doing 10 years ago at Adobe from a marketing perspective, and that actually is our business. So now we're teaching people how to do that. And probably as much as I do marketing, I spend time with customers like me telling them about all the things that we've learned in the past 10 years. What kinds of people you need on your team. You need data scientists just as much as you need a creative director. What kind of change management is needed. The processes you need for really being a data-driven marketing machine. And I think, we never anticipated that marketing would actually be kind of the engine for a B2C business, that we could take a traditional packaged software business. And now, the big idea was to turn that into a cloud-based subscription service so that we could have better recurring revenue and get products out in the market faster. But I think in the midst of all of that, what we learned was that marketing can drive a business like this measurably.
So you went from selling SKUs, basically, to selling a subscription. What is marketing now at Adobe versus what it was when you joined? I mean, you just talked about how it's become more important. So what was the work of marketing when you joined, and how is that work different now? A lot of people struggle with what should be the work of marketing. So what insights would you have on that?
So when I got to Adobe, we were a very traditional marketer. We spent probably 50% of our budget on events and maybe 40% of our budget on channel activities. And we would hand basically the money over to the channel because we had a two-tier distribution system, and they would spend the money on our behalf.
And your biggest channel back then was probably what?
Retail as well as resellers.
Okay,
and there's nothing wrong with that business model. The issue was we had no idea how the marketing was performed. We were doing print. We did almost no digital. And we had no idea how the media was working. Honestly, we were very in the dark. And so I think the biggest difference, and we were always creative, of course, because it was Adobe, and we had to role model great creativity. But we really had no idea what was working and what wasn't working. And so I think the biggest change has been a focus on insight, a focus on data, while still being hopefully best in class creatively, because that's super important to me and always will be. But I think actually that data makes you a better creative.
Sure.
Because I haven't met a creative who doesn't want to know the impact of the work, and I
Right.
haven't met a data analyst who doesn't want to help the creative do a
Yeah.
better job.
Yeah.
So I think the ability to measure has been kind of the key to how we've evolved.
So your customer base when you joined and your customer base now, how is it different?
Initially, our creative kind of community was tapped at about 3 million people. Every year or every other year, we would introduce a new packaged software, and probably 2-3 million people would buy it. So that's what we thought that the universe was. And on the Acrobat side, similar kind of bounded universe. And I think what we completely undercalled was the creative revolution, that everyone would basically become a creator, and that every kid would have their own website or their own Instagram channel or their own YouTube channel. Every business would need to transact through applications and websites, and so the universe was so much bigger than we could have anticipated on the creative side. Same with a product like Acrobat. PDF is actually the most distributed piece of software in the world. And then we added a whole new business, which was the measurement of all of these things and the management of all of the data. And, you're talking tens of millions of customers instead of a universe of 3 or 4.
Amazing. Just a total redefinition of your business. What would you say, we're here at Cannes, everyone's talking brand purpose, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. How do you feel at Adobe? How do you describe your brand? Is it an important concept for you? Do you talk about it? Do you measure it? Do you think about activation of it internally and externally?
Yes.
Yes to all of that?
Yes to all of that. So our founders, John Warnock and Chuck Geschke, very kind of benevolent, generous, philanthropic guys. They founded the company over 35 years ago. And, in software, it's a people business. We don't manufacture anything. We don't have plants, factories. We have people. And so people are the focus of our entire business. That's employees and that's customers. And so it's a purpose-driven company because we really cared about the communities that we were in. So we started in downtown San Jose, terrible homeless problem, and that became the initial area of focus. Still an area of focus for us. Unfortunately, the Bay Area has terrible homelessness. But what we decided over time was that we were going to try and use our products for good. And so whether it's Photoshop, we just won actually the National Center for Exploited Children bestowed their biggest honor, the Hope Award, on us because we've been helping them for 10 years with Photoshop in age progression of photographs of missing children.
Oh, wow.
And, we're using our technology. We've done that with Hurricane Katrina. We helped people reconstruct their photographs based on technology that we have. All of the work that we do on the data side, we are constantly using our products for good. But that's kind of our area of focus, is how do we use the products? And I would say the creative products in particular have helped us with young, underserved communities. Self-expression is really important for kids who have, anything to say. And so we're really focused on, I think, product first. I think Intel was just a great place to learn how to be a leader because we had, one of the best leaders, Andy Grove. He was there almost during my entire tenure. And, it's a hard kind of edged place to work. But between my boss, Dennis Carter, and Andy, I think there were a number of principles that have stayed with me. Number one is results orientation. And I tell people this all the time. How do I get acknowledged? How do I climb up, deliver, and exceed expectations? And results is, all you should focus on. I think the second thing is, my boss always says there are flag planters and there are road builders. And he thinks I'm a flag planter, And so, but you need a lot of road builders. And so I think acknowledging, figuring out what kind of person you are and what your kind of area of I guess, excellence would be, but then surrounding yourself and complementing yourself with the people that can help you really realize whatever vision you may have. I think, you know.
So when he says you're a flag planter,
Yeah.
what does he mean by that?
So
Describe a flag planter.
I think kind of forward. I'm not afraid of coming up with zany ideas, and I don't think immediately about how they're going to happen. And so you need people around you who can help you get to that idea, because you can be a flag planter and be a miserable failure unless you have people around
Sure.
you who can help you build the road there. I think the third thing is working through people. And, you know, early on in my career, I remember actually having a conversation with Dennis and him saying, you need to get out there more. You need to go, you know, to network and all of that. And I was like, why do I need to do that? I need to focus on my job. And he was so right. It's so important to be out there, not only with peers, but learning, coming to conferences like
Right,
Cannes. You're
right.
going to learn things. Even if you don't want to, you're going to learn
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And so I think, you know, being out and working well through people, another important leadership lesson. And then my first boss, he told me something, and I'm still working on this, still not good at it. And he said, Anne, you can't go to the mat for everything. And I think that's another really
It's
important
tough,
lesson.
right.
For me, it's been a
Yeah.
lesson that I continue to kind of try and remind myself.
Yeah, the whole pick your battles, where do you go? It's hard.
Very hard.
'Cause it's hard to watch something you know you could help or fix.
But you can't solve every problem, especially when you get to a senior position. It's
right.
just impossible.
Yep, yep. So you made the jump after 20 years to Adobe. Tell us about that decision. Couldn't have been easy. I was
Oh,
at
it was
P&G
so
25
hard.
years. You know, it becomes part of your identity, right?
So hard. And I'd never really worked anywhere else. I'd only worked a year in journalism. And so, but I knew it was time. I
What
felt
told
it
you?
was
What told
time.
you it was time?
I think, you know, I got there when it was about $1 billion company. When I left, it was a $40 billion company. I was a career marketer, and at Intel, the natural evolution from a leadership perspective was to go be a general manager. And I wasn't really interested in doing that. And so I would say it was time. And I wanted to pick a place that I felt was going to be more maybe aligned with my, you know, my
Creative.
general interest.
Yep,
And
yep.
obviously a creative software company was a good match for me there. But culturally, these could not have been more different. And I did not know one person there, literally not one person. So I got dropped in, and it was shocking. It was, first of all, software and semiconductors could not be more different. I mentioned, you know,
Yep.
people versus kind of, you
Yep.
know, factories. And I had a very, wonderful as it was shocking to me. Building a network again, understanding how things work. But I think I hit it at a time.
So what compelled you to do it? Was it a recruiter? Was it a friend?
It was actually
it-
the sitting CMO contacted me, and I knew her. And she said, I'm going to retire, and I'd love you to come in and talk about it. And, you know, I was happy at Intel. I had
That was
little
pretty visionary
kids.
of her.
And I came in, and the interview process at Adobe is very intense. You talk to a lot of people. And in fact, I talked to my boss 3 times, and I kept leaving, you know, at lunch to go talk to him. And the third time, I looked at him and I said, Shantanu, I just have to tell you that I can't come here anymore. Are you going to hire me or not? And he said, Anne, like very straight in my eye, Anne, I need to make sure that we really like you, and you should make sure that you really like us. This is a big decision. I said, I got to work at this company. I can't
Yeah.
believe this guy just told me this.
Yeah,
It was
wow.
great. I mean, I knew right then.
Yeah, so wise. So before we leave Intel, you chose a career in marketing versus general management. Was that a tough call? Because you're probably
No.
Well, weren't people trying to get you to do that?
Oh, yes.
But you had the
Constantly trying to get me
self-awareness
to
to
do
say,
it.
I would not be good at
said,
that. I
I'm
like what
not
it-
going to be good at this. They, you know, again, at Intel, they really wanted you to be in product management or general management, and I just knew that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, I knew it.
That's a brave decision. You know, at P&G, it was very tough to get out of you know, you were pushed to be a general manager and a line marketer. That was the way to the top. That was the way to more money and responsibility and growth.
Same.
If you chose to be a master, it was hard, and people did, and they, at the end of the day, they become probably more influential to the company than the general managers, because they build an expertise, they coach people, they train them, they're doing what they love.
Exactly. I mean, there was no possibility of me doing that.
Yeah. So you moved to this great company with this great CEO and this great culture after they talked to you for days and days and days. So were you ready for it? Did you feel when you stepped in there you were well prepared?
I think I was well prepared, and I think I brought things again from Intel that maybe were not as prevalent at Adobe. A very structured kind of way of thinking, a very lean forward way of thinking, and I think I brought things, and that's the other thing. Another great experience anecdote from Adobe. When I got there, I had this HR woman who was trying to help me integrate. And so I said, oh, okay, so tell me how that works. So I come in and you teach me how to be like Adobe people? And she said, no, you bring the best of you and we give you the best of us. And we try to marry those two together. And so I thought, this is great.
Incredible.
I mean, it's really these cultural kind of little moments that I got early on.
What a reaffirmation of your choice, too.
Exactly. Right? But I found that was so true because, I was this pushy broad coming into a place that had a lot of cultural merits that I could absolutely learn from. And maybe some of the structure and flag planting was something I brought.
Yeah. So did you trip up at all? I mean,
oh, my gosh.
And
Still
if you did trip
it.
up, don't we all? But where do you think, if others could learn from your onboarding? I'm taking you back a few years, but where did you kind of make a mistake? What was your biggest trip up?
Maybe
not listening to people or moving too fast or whatever.
Trying to change things too quickly. Yeah. Another interesting, early on, I came from a place where we had an open kind of setting where everybody had a cubicle. I'd never worked in a closed office before. And I came to my floor and I had a door. I'd never had a door before in my whole life. And I was in a really large office, kind of set off by myself. And I really didn't care for it. And so I came out and I said, I think we need to redo all the offices, tear down all the walls, and put everybody in a cubicle. And within hours, I was, maligned by my entire team. And I said to myself, I don't think I can move that quickly with these things. And I think, listening, it's part of what you just said. I think listening, understanding, these are kind of ways that people have been working here for a long time. Don't kill things that maybe you don't understand. And so, that change probably needed to happen a little bit more methodically.
Mm-hmm. If you think about your tenure there, what do you think is your kind of greatest achievement, and what do you still feel like something you still need to do?
Well, I think becoming like a data-driven digital marketing machine is probably the thing I'm most proud of. So
you've built that capability in the company.
I feel that we really did that, and I'm super proud of that. And it's so ironic because really I was a writer. I was in advertising for years, and it's kind of ironic that that's what I'm pointing to. But I think that's probably the best thing that we've done, and it's pretty extraordinary.
How big is your team now, generally?
It's pretty big.
Pretty big, yeah. Okay. A lot bigger than it was 13 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, that was a conscious choice. We brought a lot of things in-house because we're Adobe. We make all the creative software so we can create a lot of our own content. We measure everything, so we have a lot of people who are doing that work internally. So I don't think that's for everyone necessarily, but it worked out for us.
Do you rely on external partners for anything?
We do.
Yeah,
for
in what
sure.
areas?
So, I mean, creative, we supplement creative. We also have a huge creative network. So we have something called Behance, which is a social network of, 10 million creatives. So we source a lot of content from them, which is awesome. And we do creative challenges practically weekly where we'll work with an artist. Like Billie Eilish is a young female musician. She's also an artist, and we're doing a challenge now where she'll use our social network to solicit submissions for cover art. So we do a lot of things like that. But I think, it's just been an incredible kind of series of new innovation all the time.
So I'm getting a sense of this, but what do you really love about what you do? And on the other side of it, what still drives you crazy?
I still love doing really crazy creative. I mean, I think, you could get me in a room and I could do that all day long. I love doing that. And what don't I like to
So what have you worked on recently in crazy creative that you really
love? I am really hooked on these challenges because I think because people really have a lot of affinity for Adobe, especially people who are in any kind of creative field, we can get, somebody to come give us their assets, like a Billie Eilish or Zach Braff most recently, or Imagine Dragons, or all kinds of bands will give us their assets, let us put them out on our social networks and let people create with them and create the most magnificent things. And to me, to have thousands and thousands of people creating from just small little snippets of assets and then seeing what they come up with, it's extraordinary.
Wow. I had Julia Golden in my class this morning with the young marketers in Cannes, this class that we run here for aspiring or young marketers. And she talked, actually, you two, if you don't know each other, you should.
I don't know her.
She really, it's Lego, right? She's the CMO of Lego. So she talked an awful lot about creativity and purpose. And she said, kindergartners today, 65% of their jobs when they go into the workforce are not yet existing.
Yeah.
So our children have to understand problem solving and creativity and play, and Lego is a great venue for that. So their importance in the world, they feel, is huge to help children figure out problems and build and see things three-dimensionally and be creative. So really amazing, and you're certainly in that space as well.
I mean, that's the way we feel. We just actually today introduced a product called Fresco, which is an illustration app, a simple illustration app that pretty much anyone can use. And you're doing watercolor, in moments. It's these kinds of things, and, I think these are the extraordinary products of our time.
Yeah. So what drives you crazy now? Anything?
Sure, like staffing issues. Staffing issues are still debilitating and depleting for me. Yeah.
Because they're emotional? Because you're making calls on people?
Yeah. I still hate doing that. Hate it.
You have to do a lot of that in the kind of role you're in. What's your key for doing it even though you hate it? And doing it well? Because you must do it well. You wouldn't have the track record you have.
I think, I'm a demanding person, but for me, I feel like the most important thing is making sure people understand that I care for them. And no matter how you may end things, I want to do it respectfully, and I want to do it in a way that whether or not you feel like this was a great experience or not, kind of doesn't matter to me. And even just organizational restructuring, those constant things, they're very stressful for organizations, and they're very stressful for me. But I treat people respectfully.
Yeah. So how do you get through it? Do you have a partner in HR? Do you have a partner in your
team? I have
the
world's best partner in HR, Donna Morris. She's like the queen of incredible kind of progressive policies, gender pay parity worldwide, the most progressive family leave policies, 6 months. She eliminated performance reviews because people were just like fretting for days and days, and you would only be giving someone feedback once a year instead of all the time.
Yeah.
So she's been extraordinary. And I'll just tell you, when I arrived at Adobe, I said, this is the most extraordinarily run business from a people perspective. People are just our most valuable assets. So, big partnership there.
Yeah. So you came out to Silicon Valley many years ago, and you worked at Intel and Adobe, and it was a very male-dominated industry back then. To some extent, it still is. So tell me about that. I mean, how have you thrived in that? Where do you think we are today? What still needs to happen?
Yeah, it's a little better, but not a lot. And I mean, right now, and we all publish our statistics, and I think with good cause. So, at most of the companies in Silicon Valley, we're at about a 70% male, 30% female ratio. We have underrepresentation of, minorities, African Americans, Latinos. So it's not a great picture. I think we're all working on it. And, I focus a lot on female employees, as do the head of HR and I are both women. And we're doing everything from youth coding initiatives, lots of intact programs with girls, same with young underrepresented minorities. We do fellowships, we do all kinds of scholarships now to kind of bring talent in. But, this is a systemic issue. This is not something that Adobe or
Right.
any of our
Yep.
peer companies can resolve. This starts in middle school with girls in particular. And, there have been a lot of studies. Why does it happen? And there are a variety of reasons. It's uncool. Bro culture. It's something that I feel like I'm not going to be good at. And so it is systemic, and it's going to need to start with the education system. And so we're trying to get as early as we can to change things out. Same with underrepresented minorities, get technology in the hands of kids so that they can start to enjoy it. And we need to encourage all of that. So it's a hard problem. We're getting better, but nowhere near where we need to be. And I'll just say one other thing, which is it's the same in creative fields. Women
it
are
is.
so underrepresented
Yeah.
in creative fields. 10%, less than 10% of directors are females. Only one woman has ever won an Academy Award for direction. Advertising, still major issue. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was with a bunch of ad women this week, and I said, why are the clients better than you? They generally are. Have you really studied that? What are they doing that that you
Interesting.
should be doing? Because generally client companies are better than the agency world.
yeah.
And we don't have a good answer to that either.
This is such a simplistic answer, and I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I think the hours are a big problem. Like when you're in a pitch situation, you are working, and I remember early on when I never worked on the agency side, but I remember working, 24 hours a day when I was in advertising on the client side, and I can only imagine what it's like on the agency side. So I don't know what it is, but I suspect there's some of that in there.
Yeah. And I think the clients could help them. And I think
Yeah.
there are some efforts in that, but we have to go more. We have to go further. So you're in a fast-moving business, right? Changes all the time. You face as much disruption as anyone else, and you have to stay ahead of that. So how do you personally stay sharp and fresh and creative and on your game? What do you do? What are your rituals, your habits? Do you get up early and read? I know you watch TV to chill an hour a day, but do you run? Do you do yoga? What are your...
I don't do
Any of
anything
that?
physical. I am terrible at that. And I'm the only living person in California who doesn't have like a massive athletic pursuit. So I have to, basically indulge in media in order to get creative. But I'm an avid kind of music lover, and I still go to shows. I listen to all kinds of music. I see a lot of films. I watch TV. I'm on the web all the time. So I'm kind of a media junkie, I would say. But yeah, I'm a reader. I still read.
You still read books?
I do still
Yeah.
read books.
Yeah.
I'm reading Little Fires Everywhere right now.
Is it good?
It's good.
You recommend it?
I would. Reese
Okay.
Witherspoon's people recommended it. I just interviewed her a couple of months ago, and she was fabulous, and she has a book club. And so this is one of her recommendations, so I'm reading it.
Super. So what are you watching series-wise?
So I said Dead to Me.
Yep.
I watched The Handmaid's Tale, although I'm having a massive problem with Hulu because it keeps cutting out like after 10 minutes. So I have to keep, recharging and rebooting to get it back up and running.
They're here. We can talk to them
I'm
about
going to
that.
talk to
Yeah.
them later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still watch The Kardashians.
Sure.
I watch a spectrum of stuff.
Oh, you should.
But I feel like the Kardashians, like nobody knows marketing more than the
Right.
Kardashians.
Right.
So I learned from them.
Yep.
I learned from them and from Kanye.
Yeah. Good and bad, right? So what about podcast? Are you a podcast person?
I'm not a podcast person, But I'll listen to this.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I don't listen to NPR. I don't like a lot of talking.
You like more music, right?
I like music.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot.
So how do you
of
stay up
music.
in the news? Do you?
I'm on the web. Yeah, I like you know.
Yeah. Just surf.
I subscribe to a couple of things. I'm constantly using my
What's your
phone.
go-to? The Economist, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal? Not really any. You just surf.
Variety.
Variety.
No,
I'm getting to understand you.
I read the New York Times. I read the Journal.
Yeah.
But
the normal stuff.
I like snippets.
Yeah.
I'm
right.
a snacker.
Yeah.
I'm a media snacker.
Yeah. Okay. Good. To some extent, I am as well. But anyway, I want to close out maybe or talk about Adobe and then get into a few industry issues. When you someday leave the company, and which I hope is not imminent, what do you want people to say about you?
Probably that I wasn't afraid to do crazy things, and that I was really demanding, and that I wanted really high quality work, but that I was fair and that I was a good person.
That's pretty
That's
amazing.
what I tell my children every day. If you're a good person, I've done my job.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. Totally. You'd be a good boss.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
I think so. So let's talk a bit about a few industry issues for
Okay.
a minute and get your point of view on that. So we're in Cannes. All the awards are going to brands with purpose. Everyone has kind of, everyone sort of is.
You're saying that somewhat derogatorily.
No. I mean, believe me, I believe in it. I think it's the way to do business. It's the way I've seen brands grow, and I've made this really the focus of my life over the last 10 years. But I think everyone's got it. There's no more debate that it's not the right way to run a business, that it will deliver growth and it will deliver energy for your employees and for your customers. So with so many brands doing it now, how can you differentiate?
Well, I mean, I think, I look at us and I think it has to be, your purpose has to be extremely aligned with what you do. And so for us, the products that we make are the basis of our purpose. And, we have a very lofty kind of mission, which is to change the world through digital experiences. 10 years ago when we came up with it, it was so big. I thought, this is so aspirational, we're never going to be able to live up to it. But I think, the products are what help us get to the mission. And so if we want to help the National Center for Exploited Children find missing children, there's no bigger purpose than that. And we can use Photoshop to do that. That's pretty incredible. Yeah. If we can help small businesses, be able to erase a middleman by having electronic signatures, that's a huge purpose. And so I think the way we look at it is the only way to be authentic is if it's really part of what your company does.
Yeah. I'm so happy to hear you say that, because I think there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people think brand purpose is cause marketing or philanthropy or something you do on the side. I've heard even leaders say, well, I have my business to run, but then, of course, I have to do purpose. That's not it. Your purpose is your business, and it's making lives better for the people you're serving, right?
I mean, I think
all those... marketing can come out of that.
Exactly.
Philanthropy should be guided by that.
Exactly.
But it's a strategy.
Yeah, it is a strategy. And I think because the company was born that way, and we still do philanthropy, we still want to focus on homelessness in our communities, that doesn't mean that that's our sole purpose. Our purpose is aligned to our products.
Yep. Okay, I want to get into something else. A lot of brands make missteps, or they get caught in a cultural thing, or they lose trust. And we have many brands here in Cannes who are going through that right now. Maybe many of the social media brands are having trouble right now. So how do you come back from that? How do you come back from a crisis? And what have you learned about that in your career?
Yeah, I mean, we've had crises for sure. I think, the key, again, is to look within yourself in those really dark moments and say, how am I objectively going to get to the other side? And I think, I'll talk about some of the tech companies that I think are getting a little battered right now. And I was on a panel this morning, and this might be a provocative thought, but this is very hard. And people who don't understand what serving 1 billion people a day over, digital means, it is not easy to do this. And it's uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Every day a new thing happens that is unexpected or unforeseen. And I think a lot of the companies are really trying to react. But it is reactive at this point because it's a completely new industry. And so I think we all want the same things. Nobody wants ads that are next to deplorable content. Who would want that? But it happens. Algorithms actually make that happen. And I think what's happening now is human regulation is coming back into the equation because, machines can't resolve all of these issues. And so I feel a, compassion for a lot of the companies that are going through. And frankly, I feel a lot of compassion when any company goes through a crisis.
Yeah.
We had a crisis at Adobe years ago when Steve Jobs said Flash was not going to be used on Apple devices anymore. And this was, a major kind of, I would say, inflection point for the company, frankly. And, it was very hard for us. I think we took the high road, and that's what I really believe you should do. Either admit that you're working on something, admit that maybe the time is good for something else. But I feel that, any crisis that you don't use as an opportunity to either change or reflect is a waste.
Yep, super. Well, let's lighten up a bit.
Okay.
That was heavy, but it was good, and I believe I'm in the same place as you are. We're in an era of innovation required for these companies, and they're really smart and they want the right thing. And I think we're going to see some really interesting things come out of it. But anyway, let's lighten up a little bit and end with a lightning round.
Great.
Okay, so I want you to tell me in a speed round a brand that you're not working on right now that you cannot live without.
Spotify.
Spotify, okay. Your favorite ad ever?
The Nike Revolution ad.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So we talked about books you're reading. Biggest passion in the world for you?
Filmmaking.
Oh, cool. Do you want to do that someday?
I would like to spend time investing in films.
So last question. We're here in Cannes. They're awarding. It's the Oscars of our industry. So what marketing campaign do you really, really love and admire right now? Or in the recent past?
What marketing campaign do I really, really admire? Well, okay, so I'll use the Barbie "You Can Be Anything" campaign. So I feel, and I don't know if it's up for any awards, but I feel Barbie, talk about a brand that has gotten, beaten up for years. And I think the folks at Mattel have done an amazing job of recasting what it means to be a girl today.
And full disclosure, you're on the board, right? So you understand what they've been going through.
Full disclosure.
Yep.
And I think that makes me actually even more
credibility.
proud of what can be done, because there were a lot of naysayers about what this brand could be and what it had become. And I feel like, they took the information in and they created a whole new Barbie. And so this campaign is basically inspiring girls to be whatever they want to be.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful purpose that has come to life through their behaviors. It's a great case. Yeah. So, well, thank you, Anne.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you.
It sure was.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.